can't really accept the challenge. Yeah, and if you are kind of forced aside of the main track, then Magnus is of course very happy to get the upper hand, get a better position, and then the question starts to appear: that is he playing for a draw, or is he trying to punish his opponent for his brave decision of trying to get the game? So also he refused the draw for against Ivanchuk when draw was enough to qualify to the quarterfinals. That was another statement showing for the field that, I'm not afraid, I'm ready to fight in any situation.
Definitely tough for Prague, but I have a feeling we'll get a game in that one, at least a fight. And there we see the handshake between Magnus Carlsen and Gukesh. And it looks like the players are about to start. There we go. The clocks have been pressed. They start to tick now. And okay, moment of truth. Move 1 from Magnus Carlsen. I think we'll start here, Peter. This is the marquee game of the day. Of course, we'll go to...
Yes, but sorry to interrupt. I have to very quickly mention that Magnus will first Jadub all his pieces. And now the question is, which piece he will Jadub first? Because what I have witnessed so far, the piece that he Jadubs first is the one that he moves finally, but he's teasing his opponent, playing some mind games. Let's see.
Okay, so I'm predicting he'll Jadub his, adjust his e-pawn first in front of his king. Oh, wow, he starts with the b1 knight, Peter.
That's not gonna happen. Yeah, that's for sure. But yes, I always love this, that before you start your game, you just have to make sure that everything is ready. And let's see. Final touch and e4.
And e4. Yeah. Also, I noticed Magnus always pushes his knights. It looks like Gukesh as well. He turns them inwards. I'm always kind of a front facing man there. Wow. Okay. The c3 Sicilian from Magnus Carlsen. You rarely see this one.
Yes, but of course it's a very annoying setup to face with the black pieces. And we talked about it, that Gukesh had to make up his mind how he will deal with the open Sicilian. But Magnus says, no, thank you very much. I'm going to force you into the Alapin. And we see d5.
Yeah. And Magnus likely to capture that pawn. I don't want to say that I had any influence on this, but when I was in a situation in the tie breaks in round 2 where I just needed a draw with white, I also played the c3 Sicilian, and that worked very well. So yeah, it tends to be an opening where you're relatively solid and some bailout opportunities for white if you need. And okay, we see d5, this variation with queen takes as well. Yeah, I must say I've seen Magnus on the black side of this plenty of times, but I'm trying to recall even one time that he's employed this with white. Yeah, very, very surprised.
Well, I believe there was one moment during the Champions Chess Tour when Johann Sebastian Christiansen's Alapin, high pressure Alapin chessable course came out. And I feel like at that point, Magnus actually employed that Alapin in one of his games. I can't really recall against whom, but I do remember that it happened.
Okay. And this is one of the main lines of the Alapin, of course. This position I think I've had countless times throughout my youth career as a junior player. But okay, the moment of truth now for Gukesh, because black has a few various setups to choose from. You can develop your light square bishop out to g4. You can just play with e6, which tends to be the trendy way these days, but that's been very well analyzed these in recent times. Very topical stuff. Okay, Gukesh pausing. He cannot have expected this opening from the world number 1.
Yes, and it's a very unpleasant choice. Yeah, the problem is that bishop g4 is like a super clean way of playing this with the black pieces, but super clean isn't exactly what black is desiring. On the other hand, e6 is slightly passive, but keeps all the pieces on the board. It might not be the perfect move to equalize fully. However, it could be at least a choice to try to play a slow long game.
Yeah, and from your experience, Peter, what wisdom would you give? Would you just try to just survive the opening with lots of pieces on the board, or would you kind of play what you think is objectively best in this type of must-win situation?
Yes, well, my advice is not to get into this situation at the first place. Yes, if it really happens and you have to deal with the situation, I believe that avoiding the forced lines, the main lines, is probably recommended. I do believe that Gukesh will most probably go for the move with e6. The only problem there that it's kind of a slow affair where Magnus is also very experienced. Yeah, with white and with black, he has had plenty of such structures, so he will feel at ease. Besides, black also needs to show some precision in order not to be worse there. It's not an easy call.
Yeah, not an easy call, and that's why we see Gukesh take the first long think of the day. And okay, maybe we can go around the horn, check out some of the other games, the opening phases. And we saw that, of course, in the Tarash, maybe in the other Alapin that might happen. And here, players have chosen a certain variation. I'm not too familiar with this one, I must say. Maybe we can backtrack to the moment we were last here.
Yes, so we were waiting for Gukesh's next move. It was e6. And I believe that the main line is knight a3. No, it's something brings me those memories that after e6, knight a3, c takes d4, knight b5 was one of the key points for white, but Magnus decided to go bishop e2, c takes d4, c takes d4. Yes, he gets a isolated pawn, but he gets also very quick development. Knight c6 castles, bishop e7, knight c3, queen d6, the good old traditional queen d6. Knight b5, that queen is quickly kicked away before black is able to castle and put the rook on d8, posing pressure on the d4 pawn. So queen d8, bishop f4, threatening knight c7 checks, so black is kind of forced to play knight d5, bishop g3, castles, rook c1, bishop d7, and we reach the current position.
Yeah, and I mean, to my understanding, it feels like black is completely fine here. It looks like you're really solid. You've blockaded the isolated queen's pawn. Black's knight on d5 looks really nice. Claiming an advantage ever is going to be difficult because it feels like white will, at the very least, drop back the knight to c3 at a right moment and just trade off a few pieces. And for Magnus, that's not the worst thing in the world. Just needing a draw, but okay, at least for now. Gukesh here, he's got a position. He survived the opening. Still, all the pieces on the board. Must be a success for black, no?
Yes, I also have the same feeling. Of course, there are some questions like white has the chance to jump in with the knight to d6. What is your take on this? Do you like to jump in, or do you believe that maybe the disbalances will give black some counter chances?
Yeah, I guess the assumption is that black will take that knight. I'm not sure when or whether you need to immediately. But the word imbalances is right there because here you get the bishop pair as white, but black is forever going to have this blockade on d5. I mean, I still feel it's roughly balanced here, but I don't think Gukesh should be too afraid of this. Again, imbalances maybe aren't to Magnus's taste. Yeah, knight to e5 will come. This is maybe the one downside for black in this exact position.
Yes, but still, it's gonna be a tough call for Magnus. Yeah, that does he jump in with the knight to d6? What else is there? The other move you also mentioned, the retreat with the knight back to c3, challenging the knight on d5. Is there a move like knight takes c3 a question just in order to spice things up, or not?
I kind of want to wait for black to play a6 before playing knight c3, but I mean, I guess we can talk about the pawn structure in general rather than an isolated pawn. White would have these hanging type of pawns. I know you call them hanging pawns on c4 and d4. I'm not sure what you call them here, but either way, different structure.
Yes, and it's a little bit more dynamic, right? I mean, not there won't be so many piece trades. White might get the initiative, but it could also be like black's provocation. Yeah, that okay, please attack me. After all, I need to create some chances. Black definitely has long-term play against those pawns. White will certainly get very active with bishop d3, queen e2. Do you see Magnus going for this structure, or given the situation, he believes that, okay, let me keep things more under control than this?
Yeah, I mean, I do know that Magnus quite likes this exact pawn structure. I remember he had this very beautiful win against Aronian. I actually think that came from a Nimzo Indian, where you can sometimes get this pawn structure as white. And yeah, I mean, I remember a game against Duda that he won very nicely as well. I think he likes the flexibility of having them. But again, maybe with the match situation, he doesn't necessarily want to change things too much. So I do have a feeling he might at least delay the decision about knight c3 a bit longer. But yeah, knight c3, knight d6, both very logical moves. I'm wondering what else. Bishop c4,
Exactly.
if you really want to be boring, try and hint that you might trade some pieces.
Wow, okay, let's take a look at bishop c4. Yeah, with the clear intention of going bishop d5, ed, knight c7. That would be kind of a threat. And inviting rook c8, so then that you jump with the knight into d6.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know anyway that... okay, no, but this we have to highlight. Yeah, basically the bishop c4, rook c8, another move, knight d6, bishop d6, bishop takes d6 makes perfect sense from a drawish point of view, that white even has the chance of simply taking bishop takes d5, e d5, and plays a completely drawn equal position. This would also bring us that probably after bishop c4, black has to do something else. The computer does suggest the move knight a5, hitting that bishop.
Yeah, this is the one downside, and unfortunately bishop takes d5 is met by bishop takes b5, hitting the rook on f1. And white's drawish operation, the exchange mission, does backfire. I guess here, yeah, you just drop back with the bishop and life goes on. But bishop c4 maybe not the best in light of this knight a5 move.
And we are speculating, and Magnus is taking his time. Yeah, it's not that obvious. I mean, knight d6, knight c3 are the most natural moves, but both of them consist some long-term strategical decisions. And based on the match situation, yeah, Magnus is now trying to evaluate which position suits him best given the situation.
Yeah, and we shouldn't, of course, assume that Magnus is happy to kind of just play a kind of boring exchange operation here. Magnus, of course, will go for the most principled, most objective line, at least in his eyes, and only later on will he decide where to steer the game. But early days, Peter, shall we see how the other middle games are developing? There have been developments in the game between Fabiano and Dominguez. No updates, at least in the Salamova-Muzichuk game. So let's zoom out of that one. And here we see the bird's eye view. Some developments in the open section of the World Cup. So maybe we check out what's been going on over there.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Feels like in the Alapins, at least some talking points in those two games, starting with the C3 Sicilian. Not too much has changed in the game between Caruana and Dominguez. Abasov against Fide, we'll update everyone on shortly. Maybe we start with, Arigaisi against Prague. I just noticed a position that I'm very familiar with, so I'm a bit biased.
Definitely. So let me listen to you, David. Yeah, tell us all your secrets.
Not too many secrets, Peter, but I will tell you about one. Well, at the time, it was a secret match against Kasparov that I had in 2017.
What has happened here? We were thinking about, will Magnus retreat the knight to c3 or will he go knight d6? He did retreat the knight to c3.
Yeah, I do know that Magnus does like that pawn structure, so maybe I was just influenced by that when trying to predict the moves. But Gukesh reluctant to take on c3. I guess after knight takes c3, b takes c3, white would have been very quick with c4, d5. Black's pieces slightly clumsy there, potentially not ideally placed. So maybe Gukesh wanted to delay this decision. And interestingly to me, Magnus did not take the opportunity to capture on d5, going for that symmetrical pawn structure, maybe just because black has too much pressure on b2, on d4. And okay, bishop c4 instead. What do you make of this? He's asking, he's begging for this capture on c3.
Yes, and I feel like Magnus is doing the right choice. He's playing according to the demands of the position. This is what we want to see. This is how you have to handle this situation. And the reason why we are so skeptical of Goryachkina's choice, that she was playing for the result, not what the position demanded. And Magnus does not take on d5, doesn't want to give the slightest of initiative for black. He's now fighting for that d5 square. And black is faced with a big question. I mean, if black takes on c3, then one could argue that that queen on b6 is more of a vulnerable piece than a good one. White might hit that queen with a rook b1 tempo, then the pawn on b7 will be also hanging. And otherwise, how does black keep that knight on d5? You might give an argument that the knight should move back to f6. However, whenever black loses the d5 square, the control of the d5 square in these isolated pawn positions, that will give white the chance to go with d4, d5, or also some other dynamical possibilities. I'm loving this move from Magnus.
Yeah, really classy move. And he's lost a lot of time with his knight and a bit with his bishop now, but yeah, it feels like somehow he's coordinating really nicely. I'm trying to look at ways to imbalance the position. Queen takes b2 feels too risky somehow. Yeah, it feels like white just captures everything, and rook b1 is a threat. Knight e5 will come. Lots of dynamism here for white. Okay,
yes.
You predicted he played knight f6, Peter.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, I was just mentioning two of the possible moves, and basically, since he already played queen b6, yeah, it was clear that Gukesh does not want to take on c3, and it would have not helped his cause. And now Magnus taking his time after knight f6, because it's such an important decision, yeah, that how does he react? Does he want to go for some d4, d5 and try to liquidate everything? Or is there a case to be made that, come on, we can start hitting that queen on b6, and we have some very interesting knight a4, knight c5 options as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess you start by looking at the forcing move by calculating d5. It depends how safe Magnus thinks that one will be. If not, then maybe he'll look for options, knight a4. Okay, so takes.
How do you capture on d5?
First instinct would be bishop, just because queen takes walks into bishop to e6, but maybe that's not such a big deal.
Yes, so okay, I just don't want to make a move for you, yeah, that not that after you blame me that, okay, Peter, but those were not my intentions. So yes, okay, bishop takes d5, fine. We are expecting some move like rook 8, d8, probably protecting the bishop and also eyeing the queen on d1. Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with this pin?
That's a good question. b2 is hanging, bishop to e6 is a threat. I need to move my queen, not sure where. Queen to e2, I guess just bishop f6 for black.
Yes, and then we go rook f8. I feel like, yes, one could argue that because of the match situation, white could consider it. But knowing Magnus, he's not the type of player who wants to play so softly. I don't. Yeah, somehow black gets all the pieces in. You somehow lose the initiative. I very much feel that Magnus might take his time, and he might feel that actually I have all the rights in the world to go for the maximum and forget about the match situation. The position calls for knight a4. Let me go for it.
Yeah. I mean, the more we looked at the other one, the more it feels like black is totally fine, and actually things could start turning if you're too negative. And again, yeah, playing with the draw in mind is unhealthy, if anything. So knight to a4, should we investigate this one? Where does the black queen run to? You want to get trapped?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, queen a5 looks like the most natural. Mm-hmm. But we follow up with knight c5. That's the whole point. Yeah, thanks to this bishop on g3, we have these tactics with bishop takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes e5, running into bishop d6, winning the exchange. By the way, also bishop takes e6 is already safe enough, but bishop d6 just wins. So I don't really see the drawbacks of knight a4, but I do see like white gets some very interesting positions.
Yeah, it all hinges on knight c5, but it looks really strong actually. What does black even do to equalize or to stay in the game? Knight a4, knight c5 is pretty much a pre-move here. I don't see it.
Yeah, Peter. So okay, queen a5. Okay, we only have queen a5 or queen d8. Queen d8 doesn't look so sexy. So let's play queen a5, knight c5. But also now, what to do? One could argue that black does not want to take on c5. And if he does not want to take it, then maybe he needs to protect that pawn on b7, but there are no good ways to protect. Bishop c8 is clearly not a question. Besides, white has also these typical ideas like slowly preparing a3, b4. I don't know. Please make a move. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, unfortunately, knight takes d4 doesn't work here. A little tic-tac here, because knight takes d7, I guess. Knight takes f3, and then just g takes f3, making sure that the knight on d7 is pinned. Protected. Yeah. This would win a piece for white. If the tactics don't work for black, yeah, big trouble potentially. Knight c5, I don't want to play a move like bishop to c8. Ugh. You don't really want to take your knight either.
The best move for black, the most natural human move is like queen b6 if you don't want to take on c5, but queen b6 is a terrible move in a sense that white first of all can repeat with knight a4. Secondly, now already knight takes d7, knight takes d7, d5 is completely different story. We break with d5, and knowing that we have the pair of bishops, there is even the chance to fight for an advantage. White is clearly fighting for an advantage. That's absolutely no-go for black. That brings us to bishop takes c5, d takes c5, and then maybe just making a move like rook fd8 and try to reshuffle the d7, bishop c6, getting some control of the light squares. But that d6 square, this monster bishop on g3, certainly should give white some advantage.
Yeah. Suddenly, though, the imbalances only work in white's favor. At least earlier, you could play against an isolated pawn. Here, no more isolated pawns. White has the bishop pair. Beautiful d6 square, as you say. I mean, I was cringing because it's the least sexy position I've seen in a long time for black. But I guess he needs to try something like this, Gukesh. He's still in the game. Knight e4, I guess, would be coming as well.
Yeah, well, all eyes on Magnus because it's such an important decision, and he's rightly taking his time. He has already invested more than half an hour, but he's making sure that he gets the type of positions that he wants, and he keeps the control. Yeah, I think this is the most important thing, that you keep the control. You should never give up the control just because you are pursuing some draw. That's the way to lose the game. You have to keep on hitting the opponent. Also, when you are in a must-win situation, yeah, you want to double edge the situation, but it's so annoying when your opponent is maybe slightly better, has the initiative, and you yourself don't have real counter chances.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 2023 Fide World Cup. I'm your host, David Howell, and I'm joined by the one and only Peter Lecko. In front of us, we do see Magnus Carlsen, world number 1, who's currently 1-0 up in his mini-match against Gukesh. Let's have a quick look at the action that unfolded yesterday when they played their first game.
The quarterfinals of the Fide World Cup saw the world number 1 face off against 17-year-old Gukesh. 7 moves into the game, Gukesh long-castled. After Magnus played bishop b4, Gukesh did not want to risk pushing with e5, so instead attacked the bishop. Magnus traded and equalized the position. Gukesh infiltrated Magnus's position with queen takes g7. Calm and collected, Magnus found the only moves and started to gain control of the game. After both players exchanged the knights, the game became a double rook endgame, although Magnus had a powerful passed e-pawn. After a rook trade, Gukesh thought to activate his remaining rook by swinging it to a2, then a7 with check, although this ended up being a critical mistake. Magnus simply marched his king forward, along with his passed pawn, and Gukesh eventually resigned. Magnus proved yet again that he is the greatest endgame player of all time, along with improving his chances of winning his first World Cup ever.
And yeah, masterclass there. Endgame maestro Magnus Carlsen, of course, working his magic. And Peter, today we see a very different type of position, but also difficult for Gukesh. What do you make of his chances? Magnus did find those critical moves that we were highlighting as potentially very strong for white.
Yes, Magnus is playing principal chess. He isn't thinking about the result. He just wants to make good moves, put the pressure on his opponent. After all, that's the best way of securing a draw if you manage to cause problems to your opponent. I feel like Magnus is also feeling the moment, yeah, that he has to spend time. We do see that he has already spent more than 40 minutes, I mean something like 45 minutes for all his moves, and we are only move 17. but he made sure that he's firmly in control.
Yeah, that's uncharacteristic from Magnus to spend and kind of invest so much time so early, but maybe it's influenced by the match situation, the fact that he's employing this opening that he rarely uses, the Alapin that we've been talking about. And yeah, like you say, it's been used wisely. It looks like it's worked out well, knight to c5. And now we're predicting probably eliminating that knight for Gukesh. Oof, tough decision, though, for the youngster. Not easy here. Everything he chooses kind of has downsides right now, right, Peter?
Yeah, he's leaning back.
Yeah, feels like Magnus is in boss mode. That body language, very relaxed. And yeah, Gukesh, if he takes this knight on c5, he just allows a very strong pawn on c5. White's dark square bishop becomes the key piece. If he drops his queen back instead, yeah, then White has the chance to repeat. And looks like this is the best option for Gukesh. What do we think? How would you evaluate this type of position?
Yeah, well, I think that psychologically it's very difficult for Black to make this decision of capturing on c5, because you know exactly that bishop on g3 will be such a monster. The d6 square is vital. White also has this a3 b4 ideas. If that happens, Black will be in a lot of trouble. On the other hand, maybe the position is more scary. Maybe it looks more scary than it is in reality, because it's not so easy to push a3 b4. The pawn on a3 will be hanging. Black has chances to regroup the pieces with rook fd8, bishop e8, eventually also some knight e7, bishop c6. The black knight might be able to jump to e4. I believe that it's psychologically very tough to make a decision like capturing on c5, because you feel that it's very risky and very dangerous and it could simply be bad. But if you force yourself and you make the decision, then suddenly you might also get some counter chances.
Yeah, and you can tell it's psychologically tough because Gukesh has now been spending 13 minutes on this one move. Actually, is Black threatening to take on c5 in that position, Peter? It's not so easy, not at least intuitive, to find a move for White after your nice move there, rook f to d8.
Yes, I mean, one could argue that, okay, a3 is a very natural move. Queen takes c5 should be, I believe, met by bishop takes e6. That should work, especially knowing that draw is kind of also fine for us, but probably bishop takes e6 is... no, hang on. Yes, no, bishop takes e6 is kind of a draw. Like there is this tactic with bishop c7. Wow, hitting that rook. Yeah, so easy to miss.
And if I move it, rook dc8, let's show.
Then bishop a6 comes.
Oh, that is just evil. That is mean.
For sure. I mean, the queen moves. The queen can't really move because then bishop b7 just wins an exchange. Black probably has to already give up the queen and then try to claim some kind of a compensation. After all, Black has a rook piece and a pawn. It's not clear how much is White's advantage, but clearly Black is not the one playing for a win here.
Yeah, here I think I would follow Ivanchuk's lead and just resign, just knowing that the match is over, just rather than sit and defend this one for 3-4 hours, just trying to get the extra rating points. But meanwhile, Gukesh has decided, okay, no tricky tactics, such as that bishop a6 idea. Bishop to c8 instead, retreating. It's a bit sad, but at least he's kept his long-term trumps of the bishop pair, and White still has this pawn on d4. What do we make of this decision?
Bishop c8, well, it's a desperate decision. I think that Gukesh is not happy, definitely not happy what he got himself into, and Magnus blitzes out the move a3. Yes, it's a pawn sacrifice. It's also the computer's top choice. Now the point being that knight takes d4 is kind of the thematic idea from White, I mean from Black, but it's clearly on Magnus's radar. He wants to go b4, forcing Black to capture on f3 when White takes queen takes f3, and look at White's pieces. I mean, yes, Black did win a pawn after something like queen b6. White can maybe just follow it up with rook fd1. Might be threatening knight a4, trapping... No, not trapping the queen. There is still the c6 square, but so many options. It's looking very promising for White.
Yeah, I think compensation is an understatement here. It looks like you have everything: beautiful bishops, queen, knight, rooks, just for the cost of one pawn. And yeah, I mean, this is instructive for everyone at home, right? Just need to draw, but happily giving up pawns without thinking, banking on the activity of the pieces, trusting his calculation here. Magnus, a3 is a really nice move. And psychologically, that'll be tough for Gukesh as well to react to. He spent 15 minutes there, and Magnus replies instantly. Oof. Yeah,
Is
you're
there a
highlighting rook
case?
d8.
Yes. Is there a case to be made for rook d8 just that the pawn on d4 can be taken thanks to the tactics, but we don't like the outcome of it? And rook d8 is a natural move, hinting at the d4 pawn and making sure that white is not yet able to play b4 because the pawn on a3 is hanging.
Mm-hmm. So maybe now a threat of, okay, bishop takes c5 first of all, but sometimes knight takes d4. How does white react? I don't really want to retreat. This knight on c5 is so beautiful.
Yeah, not
rook d8,
easy.
I think, probably the most challenging, at least visually.
Yeah, I think that rook d8 will be played. It's connected with bishop c8. Clearly, Gukesh does not want to go for that passive position after grabbing the pawn. That's not a real winning attempt. Rook d8 is flexible choice. And the computer indicates, because this is such a deep move, otherwise we would need 15 minutes thinking about this position before that move comes to our mind, I believe, is bishop c4 to d3. It might be the move that Magnus actually has foreseen. And let's not forget, Magnus himself took something like 20 minutes to come up with this knight a4, knight c5 plan. I believe that he has spotted the move bishop d3. According to computer, it's like a very important key move. The rook protects the c5 knight, reinforces that. And let's just highlight that knight takes d4, of course, clearly runs into the simple tactics of takes, takes, and bishop takes h7 check, followed by queen takes d4, picking up the rook. And wow, that's actually bad news, because we were so happy about rook d8, but after bishop d3, again, things are turning in white's favor.
Peter, I think, yeah, I would have needed 2 hours to find bishop d3 by process of elimination. Suddenly, I was scared of all these pins, all these tactics. I would have been in retreat mode and bring the white knight back to b3 or something kind of cowardly. But bishop d3, it's just so harmonious. All the tactics work there, as you say. And suddenly, black is stuck. Undeveloping with a move like bishop c8, kind of going back to where you came from, is only ever kind of viable when you can back it up with concrete play. But here,
and not sorry, yes, please, because I wanted to say, if you don't know what to do, I will suggest you a move for black.
Okay, let's say knight to d5. Just, I don't really know what else.
Going back to
I'm going to
d5.
get my queen trap.
Yes, knight d5. But you don't really have a next move yet. That's your very big problem. According to computer, white can make now any move, and it's like +1 point something in the position. So white is like a complete control. White just plays a move like rook e1. In fact, the computer goes as far as to say that after bishop d3, if not for the stunning computer move, black is in already serious trouble, and that crazy computer move is rook d8 to d5, which, again, not a move that we as commentators can come up with from our own strengths. But the problem of rook d5 is that probably white even has a repetition at hand with bishop c4, rook d8, and Magnus does not want to play for a draw. But if he gets a direct repetition, of course he can take it. Wow, that's an insanely important moment, that bishop d3 is so powerful here.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, Magnus, having gone into that long think, it's definitely on his radar. And actually, maybe there's no other convenient way or harmonious way to meet rook d8. So breaking the pin, setting up all these tactics with bishop takes h7. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And yeah, just like you say, from a human point of view, a move like rook d5, impossible. And in practical terms, this is so difficult for Gukesh.
Yeah, well, for the moment, he has to make up his mind after a3, because he might actually, the reason why I believe that he definitely sees the move bishop d3, otherwise in this match situation you would blitz out the move rook d8 and put the pressure on white, yeah, that white has to make a move, white has to make some decisions how to deal with this. But if you do understand that bishop d3 is the move, and Magnus has indicated with his last move a3, played instantly, that he is already understanding this position to perfection, then okay, you can start a case for knight takes d4, yeah, because we were a little bit critical, knowing that this definitely gives white fantastic compensation. But after queen b6, black is kind of very solid and has this play with a7, a5, breaking white's construction. And if you try to compare the two lines after rook d8, bishop dc, and this position, then I also see some arguments to going for it.
Yeah, you're right. Rook d8 looks attractive until you showed me bishop d3. Then suddenly I'm turned off massively by that move. So should we investigate here? This is the acid test. We were saying maybe white just improves the rook. Rook fd1 looks very natural, taking the open file. And after a5. Okay, wow, this has been rendered irrelevant because he hasn't gone for this. Here, I guess, Peter, white would have some ideas. Before we get to Gukesh's move, Gukesh is basically trying to set up the pieces for the next game. He's retreated his bishop to c8. Now he's gone back to d8 with his queen.
Yeah, but this is definitely complete desperation. I mean, it cannot be good. Okay, what's the point? So the point is that he's hoping for knight takes d4 tactic. Mm-hmm. And against b4, he's definitely counting on a5. Yeah, targeting that b4 pawn as quickly as possible. If white advances b5, then again this tactical motive with knight takes d4 come into play. Wow, surprising, but maybe it's interesting. Who knows?
Yeah, and now you showed me this bishop d3 idea. I can't get it out of my head, but bishop d3 or bishop a2 or a bishop move would make sense, just to make sure that knight takes d4 doesn't arrive, just to overprotect the white knight on the c file.
Yeah, bishop dc or bishop a2. Yeah, both moves are kind of very natural. And the bishop on c8 is stuck. Yeah, we can never play the move b6. That's the big problem, because then the tactics with knight takes d6 and the hanging knight on c6 will pose us big problem. And without that b6 move, we can't get rid of this monster knight on c5. It feels like white position is fantastic. One case could be made. Positions, black loves to go bishop d6, trying to get that knight to e7 and slowly get harmony. Mm-hmm. Is that a move that black could try to make after bishop d3?
Yeah. Would make sense. And could I tease you here and tickle you with bishop to h4, asking you to play bishop e7 again?
Yes, you can. I mean, knowing the match situation, I can't play the move bishop e7 in any other circumstances. I believe I would instantly play the move. If I want to spice things up and I don't mind taking risks because I'm in a desperate situation, then a move like knight e7 comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, at least Gukesh is alive. I mean, it's not the most attractive chess we've ever seen, but he's found a way to keep all the pieces on the board by pushing his pieces back to their starting squares. Yeah, I'm expecting bishop a2 or bishop d3. I'm not sure which one, and either way, it does look maybe bishop a2, Peter, just to keep ideas of d5 in mind.
Yes, I also feel that now that bishop a2 is possible, it's somehow more natural from a human perspective that we keep the control of the d5 square, we keep an eye on, and ask black, please make a move. I mean, what is really happening after bishop a2? It's not obvious. Black's last couple of... let's just go back to the starting position when we got this position to understand what we are talking about. We saw this position and we highlighted that white's knight on b5 is misplaced. Black has a nice grip on the d5 square, and thanks to this, the position is kind of dynamic balanced. And then let's take a look what happened in the last couple of 6-7 moves. And we see that actually white has made tremendous progress and black was forced all the way back. And that's the reason why we are so critical of black's position. White's knight from b5 landing on c5. Black has lost control of the d5 square, and Magnus actually opted for bishop b5.
And yeah, bishop b5, also a natural move. Yeah, I was just looking back at move 10, Peter, so that now this is move 19. On move 10, black brought his queen back to d8. And basically, he's got the same position now, just having castled. 9 moves later, he's just got 1 extra move, and all of his pieces are still on the same squares they were 9 moves ago. Incredible. Meanwhile, Magnus has had basically like 8 free moves, and he's used them quite well. Okay, so bishop b5, there's a threat.
Yeah, but the move bishop b5 actually gives me some hope from black side, yeah, that I have the move queen b6 moving again with the queen, but hitting that bishop on b5. How do you react to this?
Okay. This is true. I want to play a move like queen e2, but then you have knight takes d4, this tactic. Again. Yeah, I don't really want to take on c6 while you can take with the queen. This is a bit strange that Magnus rushed so quickly.
Yes, I'm also surprised because he made sure that he has everything under control, and now the move bishop b5 was very quickly decided on for no obvious clear reasons. And okay, the queen on d8 definitely wasn't the final destination of black's queen. And if I'm getting the chance to play this move with tempo, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, queen d3, there's still knight takes d4, I guess. Can I not protect my bishop? This is crazy.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Suddenly, both the white's pieces are hanging on b5 and c5. Suddenly, Magnus, he played that move, but head in hands. Maybe he realized, whoops, he pulled the trigger a bit too fast. Also, yeah, Peter, bishop b5 is unnatural. You very rarely go to these squares in these isolated queen pawn positions. So, of course, he's setting up a tactic with knight takes b7, but that's easily dealt with.
Yeah, and we have been seeing Magnus leaning back and being happy while Gukesh is taking his time. And now, if I see at the camera correctly, Magnus has made the move and he stays there. He glares at the board and is in full concentration mode, as if, did I just relax? And I missed the move queen b6? That's what I'm reading from Magnus's body language, but that could be a very big miss.
Yeah, very big miss potentially from the world number 1, Magnus Carlsen, allowing Gukesh back in the game if queen b6 is found. And Peter, let's zoom out while Gukesh is away from the board. Let's check out the bird's eye view. Of course, the games are moving at pace at this point. We're deep into the middle game in most positions, some endgames even in the Women's World Cup. And which positions catch your eye?
Well, I think that in the Erigaishi game we had some developments. And since we have been talking about one Alapin, I think it would be fair to jump right in there. That's also our other must-win game from black side. Black players are really fighting there against the Alapin, Pragnanda and Gukesh. We went exactly along the lines we discussed. It was kind of we catch that critical moment after queen d8, bishop b5 was just a completely terrible move, awful move from Magnus's side, and we have seen his body language. He was shocked. How could I have rushed with this move? Everything up till that point was perfect. He could have just moved that bishop back to a2 and bishop d3, enjoyed the position, has clear advantage, and all of a sudden things escalated, and the current position now after b6, this is the dream come true for black. Eventually, Magnus jumping back with the knight to e4, it had to be played. Eventually, black's terrible bishop, we were talking about this bishop, it moved to d7, it had to move back. Finally, it will sit beautiful on the b7 square. White has still an isolated pawn. Black has the better chances. Magnus is down on the clock. I mean, I wouldn't be ruling out a Gukesh comeback.
Yeah, dream scenario. I completely agree. For Gukesh, it feels like a free roll, this type of position, just advantage on the board, on the clock. And everything he could have hoped for. A big decision right now. Do you just keep the tension? Do you allow white to kind of slightly compromise the black structure by capturing on f6? Or do you trade off on e4, allowing a bunch of piece exchanges? Big moment for Gukesh.
Big moment, yeah. And he knows that suddenly, out of nowhere, he got a chance. Yeah, there was really the danger that he doesn't get the slightest chance at all to put up any resistance in order to fight for something in this game. And now he knows that, yeah, he has a choice. For example, bishop b7, knight takes f6, and then g takes f6. Also kind of interesting. Even there is a case to be made for trade the bishops as well. Bishop f6, g f6. We are not really concerned of this construction for black because there are no pieces attacking black's king. In fact, white's knight on f6 is completely stuck. Yes, white will play queen e3, white will try to be solid, but black can start squeezing this position. And there is the other argument that, yes, knight takes e4, bishop takes e7, and then you move the rook, but that somehow feels like white has chances to trade pieces. And knowing the match situation, I believe that keeping the tension with bishop b7 is the more natural choice.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, and it's more in keeping with Vidit, sorry, not Vidit, lots of players here today, Gukesh's style. Gukesh often chooses the most kind of ambitious choice here. Yeah, bishop e7 looks good. And Magnus, his queen side is weak. His isolated pawn in the center is just going to most likely drop off long term. Really, really unpleasant here. 10 minutes left as well. I think this is the most trouble I've ever seen Magnus in a situation where he just needs to draw with white. Bishop b5, it's all that one move, Peter.
Exactly, one move and what a move. And we have seen the body language there, yeah, that he was completely getting crazy about his mistake. And ever since, he did not find the balance, and he's in trouble.
Yeah, big trouble. Bishop b7 about to land on the board. You can tell Gukesh is excited as well. Just the body language there. Oof. Yeah, these types of positions, they arise so often from Nimzo Indians and other openings, and often there as well. I mean, this is just an improved kind of accelerated version for black. Just beautiful queen on d5. What do you think, Peter? Should we...
Yeah, let me highlight this queen and then we can move on, yes, because Magnus, Magnus, it was interesting that after bishop b7, he captured with the bishop on f6. Very, very interesting. So did he believe that this forces the bishop trade? What is the difference? So for example, after g takes f6, just very quickly, rook c7, if black plays rook, okay, beautiful.
Nice.
Yes, exactly, rook d7 runs into knight c3, queen d6, knight b5, and basically black is in the box. White gets this beautiful construction. That was the reason why after bishop takes f6, black was forced to capture with the bishop. And what happened after that? Yeah, Knights Magnus taking his time with 8 minutes, a little bit less than 8 minutes on his clock.
Yeah, I got excited there. That windmill kind of going round and round with the white knight, forcing the draw for white. Yeah, impressive stuff, but seen by both players. And Gukesh now has taken with the bishop. I would be reluctant to play against the bishop pair for no compensation at all, so I think I would take that bishop off the board on f6. Magnus at least mulling that one over. Not much time for him. Still 13 moves to make before the time control. Do you think the nerves have got to him here, Peter?
Definitely. I mean, okay, ever since he played this bishop b5 move, yeah, he knew exactly that he's in the driver's seat and there is no danger. And after bishop b5, he put himself in a very awkward position. I think then his nerves kind of let him down a bit. And then he got into panic mode and tries to defend this position. Now after knight takes f6, g takes f6, I feel like it's very nice that white has this stabilizing move queen e3, protecting the pawn on b3, at the same time also eyeing black's king, eventually somewhere going for counterplay with queen f4 against the f6 pawn. It's why is Magnus really burning so much time on the clock with when he is solo? Yeah, he will play it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That trade does happen. I saw in the featured chat a moment ago that Magnus should just swap off all the pieces, exchange off all the pieces. That requires 2 to tango, however, and Gukesh will keep some on the board. And it does look like maybe at some point Magnus will be able to bail out into an endgame, but it will come at the cost of a d pawn, for example. And defending those positions is going to be tough. So, okay, queen f4 hinted at by Magnus's last move. So queen f5, yeah, I was going to say for black. What do you think of that one, Peter?
Yes, but okay, we have to calculate. Yeah, after queen f5, white has the option of going rook c7, hitting the bishop. And a big question, yeah, bishop takes f6 is a very thematic move. You destroy the pawn structure, but knowing that black is in a must-win game, it's a big question if he goes for technical position or is he trying to, let's just, okay, we have time, queen f5, rook c7, or does he consider that Eventually some bishop d5 and trying to, but not so easy with the rook hitting the pawn on f7. Black can never really dream of any counterplay on the g file because white will be way too solid and will hit the f7 pawn. But the question that I'm having, like bishop takes f3, g takes f3, is this really a realistic winning chance, or the rook on c7 makes sure that white will have enough activity?
Good question. It's very dynamic now. I would be inclined to look at king h8, rook g8, trying to go for checkmate as black. Don't know if there's time. Just relying on the trick. The rook takes f7. There's queen g6 check.
Yeah, that's a beautiful little Cipollito. Yeah, that's definitely a Cipollito. Yes. Well, king h1 would be like the thematic move. Yeah, if black goes king h8, you want to go king h1. Just computer is a computer, and computer suggests that no, if black goes that way, you go this way. Yeah, with king f1, with 0-0 position. Yeah, it's we have been talking about this, that Gukesh got a chance. Definitely, he got a chance. He has the slightly better chances. On the other hand, white's position is very solid, and the reason why we are so negative about Magnus's position is that he was in total control before. So any kind of unbalance and some chances for black is already breaking news for us.
Yeah, breaking news indeed. 5.5 minutes now for Magnus, but Gukesh doing the right thing, sitting tight and trying to work out how to maintain the tension. You mentioned 0-0, but that was just in the line we showed with the bishop takes f3. And is there a way for black to lock things down? I mean, is there enough time for just rook d7 or rook c8, just preventing this invasion from the white rook?
Well, rook d7 will be met by queen f4. Yeah, that's the problem. That was the reason also why we wanted to play queen f5. Now the white queen activates itself, and after a move like king g7, white might be able just to keep on harassing this. And we see action. What did Gukesh play?
Similar idea. Rook c8, also stopping the white rook from landing on the 7th rank. But now, same question, Peter. Can white go for it? Can white go for that f6 pawn, go active before it's too late?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what Gukesh has in mind. Probably he felt like, all right, this c file is too annoying. I might even have chances if I play quietly. Is he eventually somewhere, for example, like queen f4, king g7, thinking about after queen g4 to run with the king to 1 square, that he steps out of any repetition of moves and make sure that he gets his king to e7, just to highlight, yeah, king f8, queen f4, and potentially a move like king e7.
Hiding in plain sight. Yeah, it looks like this is, it's quite a common idea actually in a lot of openings. So it looks like this is Gukesh's plan, just to avoid a repetition. Meanwhile, Peter, we will come back to this one, Magnus under pressure, but it does look like we might be in the final. It'll be a while now. It's going to be a busy man. Meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen in trouble against Gukesh potentially, Peter. We were here just a few moments ago.
Yes, and Magnus somehow did not go for this queen f4 line. He allowed black to play queen f5. He played the move h3, queen f5, knight h2. He's trying to maneuver his knight. I mean, it's perfectly understandable. We mentioned that knight on f3 was horribly placed. Magnus is trying to transfer it to e3, where the knight would be so much stronger. Of course, first to g4, because it also has the forking possibility on h6. How does black deal with this pressure? I mean, if we forget about computer claiming that this h3 knight h2 wasn't so accurate, isn't it a good practical try?
Yeah, looks very natural, very attacking by white, you got to say. Magnus there trying to leap forward to g4. I mean, I see white's idea, knight g4. I kind of want to stop it with h5, but I guess that knight will continue its journey back via f1. And okay, queen g5 instead from Gukesh, just fearing some knight jumps. Trying to get the queens off the board. He's hoping that his bishop will be superior to Magnus's knight in any endgame.
Yeah, it's a very nice decision, especially in time trouble. You want to make sure that the queen-knight combo will not target your king. It kind of also forces Magnus on the defensive. He cannot rely on... But knight g4, exactly. Knight g4 is working, because after queen takes e3, we might be able to capture back with the knight on e3. And I'm not sure that you can capture the d4 pawn, I will get access to the c7 square for my other rook. And Gukesh goes king g7.
Yeah, just really classy play from both sides, keeping the tension, not going for the queen trade on the opponent's terms, just waiting and waiting and waiting, hoping for it to happen at their own benefit. And king g7, that's a really awkward move to face in time trouble. Magnus with 3 minutes left. Because do you take Peter? Do you trade the queens off? What else can you do here? Not easy to find a waiting move.
Yes, but then, yeah, queen takes g5, fg5. I also feel like king g8 to g7 was such a Magnus's move. Yeah, it's like Magnus is facing himself with the move king g7. Taking on g5, not a nice transformation for white. Yes, you do get access to the e5 square, but and yeah, you can feel the tension. Gukesh is moving around his chair. He senses that there is a chance here, and Magnus down to less than.
Yeah, it feels like the apprentice has become the master here. Gukesh yesterday got ground down in a long, difficult endgame. It feels like he's doing the grinding here. I don't see a useful move for Magnus. This awkward tension on the c-file eventually will be broken. You either have to lose the d4 pawn or give up the c-file, the open file there. I don't like it. What to do?
Very, very unpleasant. Yeah, exactly. It's a situation where we can't really give a good suggestion because we know exactly how black wants to implement, and there are all these weaknesses in white's camp, which in an endgame, and Magnus has gone for
it's like
a5.
a5. Yeah. So looks mysterious to some of our viewers out there. It looks like he's playing on the wrong side of the board. Looks like he's just giving up a pawn for free. But there's, of course, two ways to capture that a pawn. You cannot take with the black queen because white gets queen h6 check. And if you take that a5 pawn with your own pawn, then at least Magnus has some targets on the queen side. If he can get rid of all those kind of a and b pawns over there, at least even if he goes down a pawn on the king side, good drawing chances. I like it, Peter. He's creative, Magnus. I would not have even been looking at that side of the board, but those pawns were weak nonetheless, so why not trade some off or at least give one away to create some targets?
Well, it was the top choice of the engine. Yeah, it's. I did not want to mention the move because, okay, I don't like to shout out computer moves, but I kept an eye, and I was truly impressed when Magnus moved towards the a pawn, and he pushes. He feels that he has to eliminate as many pawns as possible on the queen side, and also it's not obvious what is black's move. Yeah, it's kind of the most tempting option is h5 probably, which forces to release the tension. Then white eventually will be forced to capture, but then maybe this extra tempo of a5, yeah, because it all comes down to some tempo play after knight e5. Is black able to capture on d4 or not? Because white will be active after rook trade with rook c1, rook c7. Very intense moment.
Yeah, and it's no surprise that they're finding all the top engine moves. Magnus with a5, even with 3 minutes left on the clock, showing his endgame mastery. Because yeah, I think there's queens are on the board, but they will come off on the next 2 or 3 moves. So it is pretty much going to be an endgame. It's just trying to prepare. So you mentioned h5. Maybe we just show a couple of moves because this is likely to happen, right? Or maybe we also show what happens if b takes a5. But yeah, it's.
I mean, this is the line we are expecting, and the first was what happens if black picks up the pawn on d4. We somehow sense that rook takes c8, bishop takes c8, rook c1 is kind of the idea. And then, I mean, white is starting to go rook c7, so maybe the clever move rook d5, it's a move suggested by the computer. I'm not sure that it's easy to foresee this move from a distance.
Yeah, and it's important after rook d5, if white tries to give away the knight, for example, knight takes f7, I think you're trapped. Yes.
Well, also you can just take and collect them with the rook to a5, and you have wonderful winning chances. But one of the points is that after rook d5, you can include the move a takes b6. Now we again see the point behind a5 that takes. And for example, here the computer believes that, okay, but the computer has line with knight c4, rook c5, and then going for rook a1 counterplay. It's not natural. It's not easy.
Yeah, especially that knight c4 move. Tricky when there's more direct alternatives. But this is very forcing, and this is the type of thing that's at least something similar to this going through Gukesh's mind right now as he calculates if black takes this pawn just to maybe just to show then taking on a5. I guess will backfire at some point. White will trade stuff off and go for this a-pawn at some point.
Yes, for example, takes. Now if rook takes c8, just to highlight what we are talking about, yeah, rook a1, followed by rook takes a5. Yes, black still keeps some chances, but it's a step forward for white. Gukesh, feeling that this is a critical moment, he's taking his time. Absolutely correctly. You shouldn't be, when you have a chance, you feel that you have a chance, you shouldn't be rushing, especially with the 30 seconds increment, because it's so much more important to keep things under control and push your opponent to their limit than blitzing out some move which can give away the advantage. The opponent can even afford to go down to a couple of seconds and find the good move, jumps back to 30 seconds, makes another natural move back to 1 minute, and those are the psychological killing moments from the side who has just spoiled something. No, you have to keep your nerves and make sure that you play the best moves.
Yeah, and really mature, as we're used to at this point from Gukesh, just kind of pausing and trying to be super accurate instead of trying to play against Magnus's clock. And yeah, we're expecting at some point the queens to come off. I still think that line with h5, maybe that variation you showed with these just rook and knight versus rook and bishop, that type of position is likely. But okay, Magnus looking away, maybe a bit more confident that he might hold one of these difficult endgames. And yeah, from Magnus as well, I should just mention, I learned this when I did my chessable course with Magnus on endgames, on grinding out these advantages. And he was talking to me about 4 versus 3 on the king side, which pieces you want, where you want your pawns. And if it comes down to all of the queenside pawns being eliminated, Magnus will know how to draw if it's just 4 versus 3. He'll know which pieces to keep on the board, which ones to take off. So yeah, difficult here for Gukesh. He needs to keep winning chances somehow.
Yeah, the point is that h5 is so natural. However, everything comes down to that final computer move with facing rook c1, not moving that bishop, the hanging bishop from c8, but rook d5, which we have just analyzed. Not an easy situation, and Gukesh knows exactly that this is the chance. He calculates that line. He does not spot rook d5. It's a draw automatically. So there is a possibility that he will just try something else if he does not spot rook d5. If he spots rook d5, then I believe he will be very happy to go h5.
Yeah, and rook d5, that detail you mentioned, Peter, it's, what is it, like 5-6 moves down the variation already just from here, and even beyond that you have to calculate. So this would be 2 moves for black, and 3rd move for black now, rook takes d4, a 4th move for black, bishop takes c8, and now it's basically move 5 of the variation. He has to spot rook d5. And even then it goes on, right? So even if he spots it, he has to evaluate.
Yeah, but if he spots it, then at least he knows that, okay, this is his best chance, because white might be able to hold it. And then again, we see why this a5 was so important to the computer. That line with knight c4 was kind of maybe holdable for white, but it's very mysterious. I don't want to get into all the details before we reach there.
Yeah, so big moment in this clash. What do you think, Peter, just while we wait for Gukesh to decide upon h5 or some type of endgame, should we do a quick recap of the other boards?
Yeah, let's quickly jump to Prag's game. We know exactly that he's in a must-win situation, and Arjun has moved away against g5, h5 with his king to c3. Prag jumps on the chance of going e4, and according to the computer, this is now a huge moment. Computer is claiming that white is in a lot of trouble.
Wow, comeback king Prag potentially. And Erigaisi, maybe again, it's that mindset of trying to force the draw. That whole sequence, I thought he was close.
But at the same time, I understand that it's the toughest opponent I could face. So, well, it has pros and cons. Well, hard to say whom I would rather prefer. I mean, I'm just waiting for my opponent, like no preference.
Yeah, in this form, it looks like you can beat anyone. And just a final couple of questions. I want to ask about your routine out there in Baku. What are you doing on rest days? What are you doing between rounds? Because it seems to be working.
Well, I mean, not much, to be honest. Just having good times with friends, and which keeps, my energy, positive. So just having good time and a bit of preparation, and and then a game.
Yeah, well, keep it up, Nijat. And just final question: have the candidates crossed your mind, or is that something to worry about after the semifinals?
I mean, it's not sure yet because top 3 qualifies, and so far, I mean, I'm not in the top 3, but definitely it should cross mind. I mean, it cannot not cross mind. So, I mean, yet another game in a couple of days, I think. So I will focus on that games and then later see what happens.
Nijat, congratulations from both Peter and myself. We were extremely impressed today, and keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, very big congratulations and all the luck for the remaining of the tournament. Yes, that was Nijat Abbasov. Fantastic performance so far. We have been truly impressed. Knocking out Vidit, heartbreak for the Indian fans, but there is something to hope for because Gukesh has chances to bounce back. Of course, it's a technical game. Magnus has all the chances to make a draw, but this is a long grind. We are expecting a marathon game here.
Yeah, Gukesh is going to try and squeeze every bit out of this position that he can. Peter, we were talking about 4 versus 3 on the king side with the pawns here, Gukesh with the extra pawn, of course. But Magnus is really well known for these endgames. And maybe we can investigate, firstly, how we got here, just in that build up to move 40 when everything clarified, but also trying to figure out the plans for both sides in this game that's might even going to last 100 moves.
Yeah, there was some very important nuance here. After a5, Gukesh finally opted for this queen takes e3 line, probably also seeing that he will get this 4 versus 3 position that we see. Everything was pretty forced. Bishop d7, rook c7. Again, we see why Magnus had sense that he has to push this a4, a5 move. Rook c7, b takes a5, rook takes a7. The pawn is attacked. Black opted for a4, that was move 38. B takes a4, bishop takes a4, and Magnus came up with a great defensive move, rook a5. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning that it's a great defensive move, that Black would love to get f6, f5 going with king g6. And if Black gets that position, it might be very unpleasant. However, f5 runs into this devilish tactic of rook takes f5, e takes f5, knight takes f5, forking the king and the rook, so that's not possible. And after king g6, Magnus immediately jumped on the opportunity to fix the pawn structure with g4. I think that this rook a5, g4 moves were key in assessing that this is probably holdable, and if it's holdable, it could be kind of nicely holdable for white. Do you, David, see a realistic chance of breaking this fortress?
I'm not sure how realistic it is. I guess there will be plans a bit later on of maneuvering around. It might take a while for Black, and I don't think he should necessarily commit too soon, but I could see a world in which eventually a Black pawn lands on e5, the Black bishop sits on e6, and then you can start playing for moves like h5 there. And again, it's hard to set this up. First of all, Magnus will have something to say about it himself. I mentioned earlier that he's had to think about all of these 4 versus 3s. He knows which ones are drawing, where to put the pieces. But you mentioned something while we're in break to me, that actually having these doubled f pawns for Black could actually be a bit of a trump card, Peter.
Yes, that's true. However, that's why, in my opinion, this g2, g4 was so important, that making sure that those pawns are blocked. Black is not getting f5, and I'm getting this deja vu feeling from the Brissago World Championship match against Vladimir Kramnik, the game number 5, when I went on to win, and that was my comeback. It was my first victory in that game. I started with a loss in the first round. It was rook bishop versus rook bishop 4 versus 3, and exactly thanks to these double pawns, I had the white pieces, so it was f2, f3, e4. Thanks to those pawns and the bishop on e3, just as you highlighted, when you mentioned the idea of eventually transferring that bishop to e6, I thought like, yes, that's my bishop. Thanks to that bishop, I was able to keep on grinding Kramnik, and eventually went on to win in a very nice performance there.
Yeah, really instructive game. I remember following that match Yeah, really instructive endgame stuff there. And this time it's a knight rather than a bishop. Do you think that helps Magnus's drawing chances?
Well, because the knight is already on e3. If the knight would be somewhere else, it would be a very shaky construction. I believe that everything works into perfection in order to set up this kind of defensive setup. The big question, how is black trying to break? Yeah, I believe that this e5, bishop d7, bishop e6 followed by h5 is a very good try. However, white gets the king to g3. He will make sure to keep that pawn on g4. White will never capture on it because then black would have this incredible powerful pawns. You have to keep that pawn on g4, making sure that if finally black gives in and pushes f5, then you will be able to eliminate the pawn and also the bishop. Still, it might be some very ugly rook endgame, 3 versus 2. It's not the usual completely dead drawn 3 versus 2, but clearly Magnus should be holding that.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy for Gukesh. This is where Magnus really excels, really thrives. Oof. Yeah, I don't know how it happens. Magnus, pieces just seem to end up on good squares. I don't know if it's luck or coincidence or just skill, but somehow his knight on e3 was perfectly placed when the endgame began. Somehow he managed to get his rook on the 5th rank and pawn on g4 just in time before it became a bit unpleasant, before the black pawn started rolling. It's just every time I see Magnus, it just makes so much harmony, but how he got there in the first place, especially with 1 minute on the clock and all of those forcing variations we were calculating, Peter. It just always seems to work out well.
I would say that already this kind of that knight e3, g4, rook c5, of course, for a caliber of Magnus, this is easy. However, I have the feeling that he already sensed it when he played the move a4, a5, and that's, the sign of a genius. After you already transform to 4 versus 3, okay, we know this kind of things. But in order to, first of all, force black to make decisions and going for these force lines, and thanks to this a5 pawn, he was able to eliminate everything, liquidate on the queen side. Then he managed to set up everything just in time with this rook a5, g4. It worked to perfection. And now it's up to Gukesh, and Gukesh is spending his time, he's thinking that how can he pose problems. I do believe that he will have to stick with your plan, and we know that it's always good to listen to David in technical positions. You are such a virtuoso yourself. I know that you are very shy and you give all the credit to Magnus and to everyone else, but also let's pause a little bit and give credit to you.
Oh, thank you, Peter. This is kind of my ultimate fantasy, having this position with black where you can push for the next 50 moves without any risk at all. You'll never lose this position, of course. But winning this against a world champion or a former world champion is another matter. And I just want to mention as well, that move 33, a5, setting up this whole endgame. Now it's nearly 10 moves later and it's kind of all worked out, kind of predicting, or at least kind of hoping for that type of thing 10 moves in advance. That's why these top players are so good. And it's kind of games like this that make me really salivate, get me really excited. I'm glad that we'll be in for the long haul here. We will learn a thing or two about Rook and Knight versus Rook and Bishop endgames. And maybe we should, in the meantime, check out the rest of the action. We have passed the time control everywhere now at Move 40, and we are likely to get 2 decisive games in the Fide World Cup. And we'll also update you all 4 versus 3. And maybe we can backtrack. It looks like knights and bishops are about to disappear from the board. How did we get here? Magnus's king is suddenly so active. I said it before. Somehow his pieces just land on good squares in these endgames, and he's forced the issue.
Wow, but actually, I think Gukesh has made a big mistake. He wasn't listening to you with this bishop d7, e5, and he went for some direct action with bishop e4, king h2, rook d3, king g3, relying on this pin that he's trying to push the pawn with f5. So it was a very concrete idea, which, however, backfired because, wow, white had this devilish little move, king f4, so easy to miss because automatically in your mind you calculate that after f5 white has to trade, of course, on f5, and then after bishop takes f5 it would be a different story. The bishop stays alive, but Magnus has started with king f4. The bishop is attacked on e4. You can't take f take g4, and after the move f6, g takes f5, bishop takes f5 is some kind of a dream scenario. I mean, this is almost a dead draw. Yeah, Magnus captures that bishop.
Yeah, I mean, what does he miss here, Gukesh? Maybe it was just that king f4 move. But this is a cautionary tale not to rush too much in endgames. At some point, you will get an opportunity to be concrete. But it feels like he definitely just a bit premature what he went for with this f5 break. And Peter, what would you do here? I'm wondering whether you can even take on f5, but f3 looks like another way to do things.
Well, rook f5 is dangerous. Yeah, then rook d4 check, king e3, king takes f5, king takes d4. I mean, certainly this is not a position you feel that it's a dead draw. It looks like it should be lost, and it might be a draw by miracle. And seeing that this should be a technical draw. Yeah, I mean, White has also some ideas like trying to check on the g file. I don't know exactly if rook c8, rook g8 or rook c1, rook g1 is correct. Giving up the h3 pawn, grabbing that f5 pawn could also be some kind of an idea. f3, the one you mentioned, also feels good enough. On the other hand, Magnus has all the time in the world at the moment. Yeah, they have reached time control. So if he feels like he has the nerves of steel, then he might get into calculating this pawn endgame. After all, it could be a forced draw if it's a draw.
Yeah, I mean, knowing Magnus, I think he'll play f3. I just think suffering is, or needing to calculate when the margins are so narrow, that's not what he enjoys, really. So, yeah, I mean, f3, just keeping the pawns intact. I don't see any winning plan for black there. Just kind of walking back with the white king if necessary. Black has no passed pawns after all. The other lines, at least you have to calculate, right? At least you give black some hope there.
Yes, okay, something like this. Yeah, if it would be a blitz game, we would be thinking, or a bullet game, that okay, there are some practical chances in the classical game. We both understand that yes, this should be a dead draw.
Yeah, the only thing is not to go too passive. Allow black to kick you back. Start walking in with the king, maybe. But even then, it should still be a draw. Yeah, maybe we can show rook takes f5. That variation you mentioned, just in case Magnus is feeling in the mood to really force it out.
Well, I have to say that you were the one who mentioned it first, because I don't have the nerves to go for such king pawn endgame.
I must admit, I hallucinated first of all. I thought black had to play king h4 here, but then the king was on f5. I was like, wait, what? So king f4.
Yeah, so king f4 would be the natural. Now, it seems like black is winning because it's shouldering white's king, but white, apparently, according to computer, is in time with king d5. And if you start calculating the lines, they don't look that scary anymore, because white's king is way too active, and it's about the h-pawn. Let's just see some ways. Yeah, if black pushes h5, king e6, f5, king f6. Just if we play some very natural moves, h4, king g6. And be careful if black is the one who is trying to be aggressive. Okay, he's still drawing, but this isn't the idea that black is dreaming of. All right, then maybe the position is the draw, but I still don't see Magnus going for it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as well, another reason not to even calculate rook takes f5 is the fact that black can take on h3 and the game goes on. That one should be quite a basic draw in the initial position. But yeah, I think I'd be reluctant to, even if I spent 10 to 15 minutes calculating, I would be nervous about taking on f5, just in case you've miscounted or miscalculated something. So f3 just feels like the safer way. Or one of the moves you mentioned, rook c1, that type of thing.
Well, rook c1 was my original idea, and Magnus goes for your move f3. You just know Magnus way too good. Very quickly, to highlight what I was actually thinking about, and afterwards I was regretting, because rook c1, rook takes h3, rook g1 check, king f7. I can't really take on f5 because of rook f3 check, and then it's a theoretical draw, but practically speaking, this is very annoying. So, of course, Magnus goes for f3. There we have the live action. f3, I guess. Yes, exactly. We saw all the moves that we talked about. f3, rook d4 check had to be played. King g3, king g5 had to be played. So these moves are blitzed out. And Magnus goes for the second rank defense with rook c2. He's inviting f4 check, king g2, king h4.
Yeah, I guess in that case, it looks like black's made great progress, but white can just wait. I guess you can just kind of hang around on the second rank with the white king. Black's only winning attempt will at some point be to bring the black rook round to the g-file, but I don't think that will be quite quick enough. White will, I guess, after a move like king h2, rook d5, king h2, will just say, okay, it takes you too long to come around for my pawns. We'll never be in time. And we might get something like this on the board. Okay, Gukesh has gone for h5 rather than f4 check, not committing yet, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, so let me get the current position. Yeah, h5, Magnus just waits with rook a2. I still feel like he needs to push f4 and king h4 because h4, king g to king f4 would be the... yes, okay, that's also... and then trying to go for some idea with king e3, rook d2 check. Clearly, white will never let that happen. White will put the king back to f2 when black's king is on f4 and then just wait with the rook, and whenever black plays rook d3, then rook will give a check on the fourth rank no matter where the rook is.
Yeah, it's really nice what Magnus is doing. He's just covering the second rank, and as soon as black blocks it, then he'll drop back. He won't let the black king in without forcing black first to commit one of the two of the pawns to block another entry path for that black king. So this one, yeah, with Magnus's technique, I'm pretty confident it should be a draw. And Gukesh, he's got close, credit to him, but unfortunately, just it's hard to beat Magnus, especially when Magnus is in defensive mode like this.
Yeah, it's kind of also nice to see Magnus on the defensive, yeah, because we often see his incredible technique when he has the upper hand and then he squeezes things out, and then one could argue that, okay, it would be interesting to see at one point Magnus at the receiving end how he handles that situation, and in today's game we actually get a chance to witness that. And so far with all this a5 and the liquidation in time table, just being time setting up that fortress position, and the game is now heading to a draw.
Yeah, it's an art form, defending these difficult positions against the top players in the world, and it's one that Magnus has mastered. I think this is a good moment, Peter, for us to go on a short break. We will be back as we reach the climax of some of these games at the World Cup. So don't go anywhere. We will be back in just a few minutes. Very confidently, we will see, yeah, the final position was just completely locked up, and nice touch here. The players discussing the game afterwards. Magnus, oof, he got through a really hairy position there. He was in big trouble, but ultimately defending extremely well.
Yeah, Gukesh was
the future
for sure, but also Gukesh showed tremendous mental strength. Yeah, fighting, pushing Magnus all the way to the limits. I'm truly stunned. And we also see the other prodigy, Pragnanda, bouncing back against Arjun Erigaishi. And I had Arjun in my mind already. That's why suddenly I mixed up the names. Big apologies there. Of course, it's Gukesh who was putting all his efforts in against Magnus, but Magnus finally kept his cool and defended.
Yeah, the way he defended as well, just really worth a playthrough for anyone trying to figure out or trying to work on their defensive skills, working on that part of their game, just pulling the break at the right time. Magnus, welcome.
Yeah, hey.
Magnus, a bit of a difficult game today. It looked like a challenge, low on the clock very early on. What are your first thoughts?
I thought the opening went really quite well. He has a number of chances to make it more or less equal, but in order to play for the win, he has to take pretty significant chances, which he did, and I think I was just considerably better until I made this crazy move, bishop b5, which I realized right after that it was just a blunder. I was intending to meet queen b6 with queen a4, but that just loses a pawn. Like, move the bishop like almost literally anywhere else, and I think I'm just better. So yeah, after queen b6, I was trying to find a way to sort of keep the pressure on, not have to to take on c6. I mean, the obvious move was probably bishop back to d3, intending, for instance, rook d8. Well, then I can go knight a4, but also b4. But he could grab the pawn on b2, and I was thinking that there has to be a way to at least force a draw here, but I couldn't see it. I was even considering lines like bishop to c7, and now knight to d5. So I just chased the queen a bunch of times here. He probably ends up on b4. Yeah, he ends up on... Oh, apparently this was a mistake. Yeah, whatever. But I was even thinking that the positions with the extra queen was not so easy. So I was trying to find another solution there. Yeah, apparently I need to do something else there. Oh, actually, rook b3, and then queen a2. There's bishop b1, and the queen is trapped. So he has to chop off the rook, and yeah, this was the kind of position where I wasn't so sure.
And was it difficult, Magnus, to switch into defensive mode after this oversight?
Yeah, it was very unpleasant, because before that I had mostly pretty pleasant choices, and suddenly it was a case of either I have something concrete and I'm better still, or I don't and I'm probably just worse. So it was not a great situation to be in there, considering the match situation. And I didn't really figure it out. Queen e2, I thought was a decent move, because I have this trick knight takes d4, knight takes d4, rook takes d4, knight to b3, rook to e4. And here I think probably queen c2 is good, but queen takes e4, yeah. This I was really hoping for.
Wow.
Beautiful.
But yeah, it was not to be rook d5. After rook d5, I really didn't like my position at all. I could maybe have played the knight back to b3, but yeah, even I was thinking even of yeah, what was I thinking there actually? Yeah, I was thinking even of some bishop d7, bishop d7, rook, knight, bishop c4, and rook f5, which looking at it now, looks like absolute nonsense, but it wasn't so easy to refute over the board.
And Magnus, we were full of praise for your a5 move a bit later. How confident were you of saving that the final stages of that endgame?
Yeah, a5 was the key. If I don't have a5, I don't think I'm... Well, I might save the game, but not in the way that I did. After a5, yeah, that really was the key. Because after that, my moves are simple. I know that I get to the time control. And then it's all about defending a position with a pawn down when the pawns and all, with all the pawns on one side, which I should generally be able to do. So yeah, a5 was the key. I was super happy to find that, and after that, I think it's very hard for him. At least I didn't see anything. I mean, the way that he played, there's no hope, specifically because of the construction I have with g4. and putting the rook on the 5th rank, which is just a pretty ironclad fortress, I think. But I didn't see anything particularly else he could do. I think after a5, at least practically the position is justified.
One question I have, Magnus, because yes, a5 worked to perfection. We were praising this decision, and it worked to perfection. However, I want to ask you that what did you calculate after the line h5? Thanks to computer, we understood that maybe this is the best practical chance for black. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was intending to take and then go knight to e5.
Yes, then rook takes d4.
Yeah, takes on c8, rook c1.
Yes, and here, did you spot the move rook d4 to d5? It was a crazy little detail. Yes, that's what we guessed, that it's just impossible. No matter how strong you are, it's so difficult to find this, especially in time trouble.
So, yeah, okay, so AB doesn't work, no?
No, actually, AB, knight c4 is the best, and computer says that after rook
AB,
c5,
but I
rook
was thinking
a1.
rook takes e5 there.
Yes,
Then
rook
BA.
e5.
Yeah, BA, bishop b7. What's the line
chase
here?
And
What am I?
forever?
No, first you listen to computer, yeah? Because otherwise it's impossible to spot b4, taking away the a5 square, winning apparently a vital tempo there. Okay, it's insane.
Yeah, it makes sense though.
Wow.
As usual, yeah.
Okay, yeah, this was.
You would have found b4, yeah, Magnus.
No, I didn't see this move rook d5. I probably if he'd played h5, I would have considered that that position. Let me see. Is knight f7 also a draw?
Well, knight f7, then suddenly this king takes f7 line is working for black.
AB bishop d7.
Yes, crazy.
Aye. Okay, yeah, that certainly would have been a very dangerous practical try for him.
Yeah, but we were kind of speculating with David that it's so difficult. There is also tremendous pressure on Gukesh. If there is no rook d5, then the game automatically peters out in draw. So he probably will have to try something else.
Yeah, and besides, I do have the move knight e3 as well. If I want to... Wait a sec, why can't white take on b6 first?
I think you can, right? A few moves ago, maybe.
Yeah, instead of rook c1. Or maybe you go bishop d7 to e8. Yeah, that's... yeah, that's not... Bishop
Okay,
d7
Yes, bishop-
now, yeah.
Yes, okay, but we don't have to analyze. It's not an endgame study.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you defend it fantastically.
This would have been...
Yes.
Yeah, there were so many unpleasant choices though, but as I said, I cannot stress enough how big the a5 move was, because just gave me a clear target, and after the time control, I was just not in any doubt that I would save it. So